Here.
Board Member Oxnard.
Here.
Board Member Tower.
Here.
Board Member Tiff.
Here.
Board Member Buck. She'll probably be in here. And Chair is here. I'm stepping in for Chair Rowe. She's been excused for this meeting. So I'll call the meeting to order, like I said, for, I should say the date, April 5th, 2021, 6 p.m. We're doing a hybrid meeting of the school board, Beverly School Board. And we're going to start now with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise.
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Vision, orders of interest. Hearing none, you're on.
Just so you know, there's a huge echo. I don't know if you guys hear it on your end, but I hear it on my end. I can barely hear you, Jim.
You hear it now, Board Member Tower, or is it during the Pledge of Allegiance? I heard it too during the pledge.
I hear you better now when you're more focused into it. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so I think it was probably during the pledge, some feedback, so we'll watch that. Any additions or corrections to the agenda? Superintendent Anderson?
None.
Any board members have anything? I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Moved, is there a second?
I'll second.
Moved by Board Member Ossendorf, second by Board Member Tiff. Start with roll call. Board Member Ossendorf,
Aye.
Board Member Tower,
Aye.
Board Member Tiff,
Aye.
Board Member Buck, Board Member Derrick,
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Okay. With the communications, with the hybrid meetings, there's a few things that were in our agenda. Hopefully we've had a chance to review them, but a couple things we're gonna go over for the people that are listening and viewing. There's a user calendar invite, list of hybrid school board meeting been named. This will allow the public viewing the stream to know why individual microphones are muted and the sound comes only from one user. For those of us at the media center, there's one microphone. So anything we say will be picked up by that microphone, whereas people in the hybrid will have their own individual microphones. So we're wearing masks up here because, like I said, we're using the same microphone. Consider if you're presenting or attending other than a board meeting, board member, we ask that you turn your camera off. And then once you're presenting or speaking, we'll ask that you turn it back on. This is because we had some questions about board members not showing up on the picture, and this way we can get that minimized, and hopefully the public out there watching can see what board members are saying and doing that here. So we'll keep troubleshooting this, and we'll keep listening at problems or anything that we have and try to work on that, Charlie and Lisa. And then, but I don't know if board member Tiff has said she can consider this, but she apparently is. She considers some training and another board member on these instructions too. So just a couple of things. Really the main thing is if you're presenting or attending and you're not a board member or the superintendent, please turn your camera off for now. Educational plan, I've asked board member Ossendorf to read the mission statement.
The mission of the Red Wing Public Schools is to educate and inspire all students as they realize their full potential and become respectful, responsible, and productive citizens.
Okay, thank you. Are there any recognitions or upcoming events anybody would like to present at this time or mention? Superintendent Anderson.
If I could please introduce Marsha Walker. Marsha, if you could turn on your camera. Hello, Marsha. Marsha was recently hired as our special education director for Red Wing Public Schools. And so Sherry and I thought that you could come to this first meeting and at least briefly introduce yourself. Marcia, if you could just explain where you came from, just so that we have an idea of your background.
Thank you, Superintendent and board members, for letting me be here. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Good. Okay. So my background briefly is 25 years experience in the field of special education in my former district, the Columbia Heights Public School District, and I worked there for 8 years as a special education coordinator, and I am really happy to say I had my first day today at Goodhue and visiting the Red Wing, all the schools. We met a lot of people today, and it was really wonderful. So I'm very glad to be here.
Okay, thank you. Welcome aboard. Glad to have you.
Thank you.
Ms. Johnson, do you have anything you'd like to mention?
No, I really wanted to take this opportunity to make sure that you could put a face with a name. We are so excited to have Marcia be a part of our team and be here with you. So,
Thank you.
Again, welcome to her.
Welcome. Anybody else have anything? Any other board members? Or any board members?
Just welcome.
I do have one thing. Last Wednesday, I had the pleasure of going down to Minnesota Marine and Art Museum in Winona with Mr. Bowes and Mrs. Bray. I joined them down there. I'd never heard of the place. Wonderful little museum. If you haven't been there, you're traveling through Winona, you have a few hours or an hour at least. I recommend that you swing in there. It's like $9, and it's a beautiful building. Looks like it's brand new, but it's there, if I recall, maybe 15 years it's been built, and really the Fastenal company really played a part in bringing it to the Winona area. I talked to Mr. Bowes down there and Mrs. Gray a little bit, and he recommended a few things. The American artists and the European artists have two different displays. I was a little bit favored the American artists, the artistry. A lot of it's in the eastern part of the United States back in the 1800s. Beautiful painting, beautiful building. The other one that I really found interesting was the Titanic Exhibition. I took pictures. 1,500 or more people died during the Titanic. There was a radio system developed by somebody, and I don't have it in front of me, that there was overridden when people can communicate from the boat to shore. So they sent out an SOS, the Titanic, and usually at night the person goes to bed that runs this radio system. But the guy in some ship 60 miles away heard the distress call, so they immediately headed that way. It took them 4 hours to get there. 60 miles. Imagine that, traveling 4 hours to get 60 miles in water. And they rescued hundreds of people. And the person that developed that radio system was credited for saving many lives from that event. But anyway, I found it fascinating down there. Thank you to Mr. Bowles for arranging that, and I was glad to be there. So, hearing nothing else, yeah, Board Member Tim.
Thank you. I would just like to recognize that today was a big day for many of our 5th through 12th graders back in school full-time, as well as for our staff members. And I'd just like to thank all of our teachers and other staff members for the work that they've done to prepare for today. I heard that in many cases, at least on my side with my family, it was a huge success. So thank you for that.
Well said. Big day here to get kids back in school. Talked to Mr. Choate earlier. Very good day. Anything else? Hearing none, we'll move right along. Public comment. I've received nothing. Superintendent Anderson?
I did not receive anything.
Okay. Return to school plan. Return to school.
Yeah, one thing I'll note is that the latest COVID data sheet was uploaded this afternoon. Again, a reminder, we meet every Monday, and so that's why there's always a late addition to the board agenda. That's under the return to school agenda item. Jennifer mentioned kids coming back. It was another great day. We made some adjustments so that we do have online only classes for both 5th grade and 6th grade students who have chosen the online only option. This was a major change that will benefit teachers and students, because teachers then can only need to focus on one mode of learning. You know, it's either the online only or it's the in-person. So we're thrilled to be able to make that happen. We did discuss a possible shortened quarantine in March, and then we said that we would bring it up again in April. And so right now, the COVID team, a response team, and I do not recommend a change in our quarantine procedures, but we'll review it on a regular basis, at least through April. So it'll be in the April 19th board information packet as well in this section. Also, there is information from the Minnesota Department of Health that recommends reviewing learning models if 5% of the school's population is positive or showing signs of symptoms of COVID. We are not at that level, and especially now with more kids in school, you know, obviously the threshold is higher because it's based on a percentage. But I just want to let you know that the COVID response team and I, along with others, are reviewing that data as we move forward. That's all I have for return to school.
Any questions for Superintendent Anderson? Board Member Osendorf?
So in the packet that we have, the quarantine procedures of the district already, I assume these are the procedures that we've already been following. There is a little bit in there of the impact of vaccinations. So if a student or staff member has completed the vaccination and they're at least 2 weeks past their last one, they wouldn't necessarily have to quarantine if they were exposed. We're currently following that then, correct? Or is that a new thing?
I'll pass that on to Shonda to provide that explanation.
That's been, can everyone see me? That's been kind of coming out more and more as more people are getting vaccinated. And now that we have staff that are 2 weeks out of their second dose, we are not having to quarantine them, and we'll do the same with students. And the verbiage was originally 90 days after your last dose is when you don't have to quarantine. They have recently got rid of the 90-day kind of bracket, and they haven't put a specific, it's 6 months, 1 year, that kind of thing. So for the rest of the school year, if you're vaccinated and you're 2 weeks out from your second dose, we also need proof. So we need a copy of the card. And we're getting those slowly coming in. Then you don't have to quarantine if you're a close contact, even if the COVID positive person is a household member. And so that's going to save a lot on the quarantine. And now they just opened up the vaccine to 16 through 18-year-olds. Which is and they opened it up wide. So I would recommend, if you haven't got vaccinated, go get vaccinated. Especially families really consider this, especially seniors. If you get going on it now, then by the time we get around to prom and graduation, there will be a lot less quarantining of students because they will be fully vaccinated. And that's our end goal here for the end of the year, is to just get as many people vaccinated as possible.
Good. I'm glad that you're looking at things as things change, because there's so many different things being thrown out there on a weekly, sometimes daily basis by many groups. If you're not, you're near somebody, but don't go symptoms up to 5 to 7 days, you test negative, get quarantined. So keep reviewing it, bring back, changes as necessary, because things are changing, and you're absolutely correct. People coming back. Any other thing, Superintendent Anderson?
That's all I have for this topic.
Any other questions? Okay, moving on. We have strategic directions 2 and 3. Is that Ms. Whitcomb? Go right ahead. I think we've had the information all sent to us and all that and reviewed, so. You can present? Great.
All right. Everybody see that?
Not yet. No.
And then just a reminder, Jess, that the microphone is up here instead of the computer.
Okay, thank you. And because I'm only on one screen, I cannot see anybody on the screen if they're trying to get my attention, so please just unmute if they need to, can they hear me?
They'll show up in the chat if they need something. They'll let you know.
All right. Thank you all for letting me to come and speak today. I know we have a busy agenda, so this will be brief but exciting. I think it's great to be able to talk about the work that all of our staff is doing based on our educational plan. So we had a great suggestion that we always want to come back to this. You all come back to this based on our strategic plan. This is what we're talking about. So direction 2 and 3 on there, that's where we'll focus today based on this plan. As always, we keep our vision and our mission in mind as we talk about our strategic directions and the actions that we're taking. And always having our core values in mind as we think about what actions we prioritize. So focusing today on direction 2 and 3, focusing on instruction and professional growth, improving student learning and engagement, and then creating a responsive, safe, and open, respectful environment. This is just how we have, at this point, put an imagery to kind of how we think about going forward with the educational plan. Always having our student learning, fostering curiosity, and embracing diversity. Obviously, that starts at the ground with our families, our community, and our early childhood. We give the base of alignment through K-9, and then we focus on our career pathways and our flight path journey. So focusing on direction 2, obviously this is highlights of the work that we're doing. I'm not going to tell you, I'm not going to read the entire 5-year strategic plan to you. We're just highlighting some things that we can share tonight. So one of the things, as you look down under the strategies that the board has asked us to focus on, with effective PLCs, we refocused on data as district-wide. We had made sure that we built in regular meeting time, that we kind of keep it sacred on the admin side and also on the teacher side. We have given additional resources and professional development starting in the beginning of the year to make sure that we are on the same page and aligned district-wide. We also provided support to teachers through professional development. We gave some extra resources in our K-6 Wonders curriculum, so we are now vertically and horizontally aligned with our curriculum. K-12 teachers all have a Google Classroom now. That is a very large accomplishment, and they continue to keep those up. Go Guardian, I would say, is what teachers talk about as their #1 resource this year. They have talked about how not only has it increased their ability to oversee staff or oversee students, it also they're using it as an instructional tool and being able to communicate with students during the day. Also, just the increase in skills and technology on our staff overall, not just our teachers, but our entire staff has increased their technology ability. Also, our students got up to speed, our kindergarten students, utilizing the Google Classroom and understanding the basics of how they can work through and submit work. We are seeing the benefits of that now when they're back in the classroom as well. The admin have utilized classroom walkthroughs to kind of support teachers in how they're going through the curriculum, but also what they can bring back to the administrative team to say where we need to improve based on what they saw in the classroom. Any questions on that direction too? So with direction 3, obviously this is kind of our lives this year. This is everybody's life with COVID and COVID planning. So I'm not going to read everything that we have with COVID planning, but I do kind of want to point out some things through. Is this coming up where
Redwood Public Schools Educational Plan in Action.
I think when you press the link, that's what we got.
Are you sure this happens? How that? Oh,
Yes.
okay. So as we go, this is the detailed version that we're not going to add to. But I want to show kind of just the intense amount of work that had to happen with COVID and say a few thank yous. So as you go down, hopefully nobody's getting sick here. Look to our direction 3. If we look at our COVID updates here, as you can see, we kind of we have thank yous to Brent Lexfold and the shifts that he made in food service. We have thank yous to obviously our COVID response team and all the work that they did with Chanda and Joni and Dawn. We have a thank yous to Alan Gaylor and how he had to shift the entire staff to make sure that our kids could walk into a building and our teachers could walk into a building and feel safe in order to learn. We had sports and activities able to develop COVID plans so that students could have that ability outside of the school day as well. So as you can see, I'm obviously not going to read all of this to you, but just the amount of work that we had to shift and staff had to shift in order to create that responsive and safe environment. So as we go back here, additional, that was kind of an add-on for us, but as we kept going with the referendum promises, additional resources were added to enhance student behavior through the alignment of expectations for our TDIS coordinator. Even though she was pulled back in to teach 3rd grade, she still kept up aligning our K-6 expectations on TDIS and putting that structure in place. We obviously have the 2nd assistant principal at Reading High School to help support and enhance student behavior there. Through improved communications, we have been doing community outreach presentations where we're presenting things exactly like this so that community understands and we can thank them for passing the referendum and showing them that we are still keeping true to our promises. For student mental health, we have Wellness Wednesdays at the K-6 team. There's a district wellness team that talks about staff mental health, led by Brent Lexfold. And our social emotional learning and equity is also a big part of this direction, but I know you all have a April 26th workshop, so I'm going to leave that there so we can present more on that at that time. Any questions?
Any questions? I don't know. See anything?
I could have a quick
Superintendent
comment.
Anderson, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Bryant. Just a note that I did include 2 sections from that education plan and action document. And by the way, that document that Jeff showed briefly is kind of a comprehensive list of the things that we did last year, that we're doing this year, and that we're planning to do in the future over the 5-year period. It's really detailed information. I shared parts of it for strategic directions 2 and 3 in the board packet. And so I encourage you to read through it to see what we are doing and to ask any questions at any time. But I think you'll see that a lot has happened even during a year of COVID.
Thank you. One more, other one, Ms. Welcome. Thank you. You know, you're right for pointing out the number of people that helped make this year go as well as it could. Now, you didn't mention all, there are many others. I get that. The report shows that, but this one truly an unusual year. We'll get back to board member Tiff mentioned some normalcy today with all the kids that wanted to come back. We're back in person today. So going forward, thank you for doing that, for this report. Appreciate it. Okay, we'll go on to school board reports. We'll start with the finance committee. Board member Power?
Yes, the finance committee had an extensive opportunity at our workshop to talk about the budget. And I think that in tonight's notes, we'll have some more conversation around what that conversation entailed. So I'll just kind of defer to that next piece.
Okay. Well, we did discuss it quite late, so hopefully we'll come to a quick consensus tonight and go forward. So thank you. I'll go on to Personnel Committee.
Thank you. I stepped in for Board Chair Rowe this evening, as she was absent, and we had a pretty lengthy discussion about our processes for hiring and rebanding and that process, and then what it looks like for each group in terms of union staff, at-will employees, and who we share that information with, and how we get things rebanded, and then what that's going to look like specifically. Superintendent Karsten said that he's hoping to enhance the process, and he would like to kind of move it slow to get it up and running the way that I think many of us have suggested. And Superintendent Anderson, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I think we also reviewed kind of a couple of paragraphs about position descriptions, position ratings, pay equity, and that kind of thing. And so the Personnel Committee is going to review that and send me any feedback before we include it in the handbook. That was one of the items anyway.
Yeah, it was quite a good long discussion about it though. And I encourage people to go back and watch it just to kind of get clarification on what were some of the specifics. And we talked about staff in terms of who gets to work from home during this process and who doesn't work from home. And I had about an hour to reflect on that conversation after our Personnel Committee meeting. And I'm not comfortable with certain aspects. And so I'll kind of explain what I'm talking about. I took some good notes. So the state on March 11th signed a document that enforced the American Rescue Plan, COVID Relief Plan. And in that, it states that we can continue the 10 emergency days for staff through September 30th. And it doesn't seem like a huge ask. I know that we have some things in place, vaccinations and, different things like that. But then on the flip side, some of the office staff or the directors or admin get an option to work from home. So it seemed kind of two things were happening at the same time, like essential staff, which is teaching staff, are not allowed to take any more emergency sick days. But office staff or directors can opt to still work from home. And so my thoughts on that were, is everybody in the school district an essential employee? Because if so, then everybody in the school district is afforded free daycare if there are daycare issues, and I don't know if there are, but Jackie and Karsten and Amy had basically said they don't want to opt in to the American Rescue Plan for the remainder of the school year. And that was their recommendation. There's no voting. We didn't do anything on that. However, I still am not comfortable with that. And so I wanted the board to kind of have an opportunity to ask questions to Karsten a little bit more specifically around, so if a staff person has used up all of their sick days and there are circumstances around COVID that would need them to take time off, those days aren't going to be available because Red Wing is choosing not to opt into that. But as we know, kids get sick. There's lingering effects of COVID. There's family members that get COVID. So there are multiple things that could still happen in the remainder of the year, especially with full kids. And so I just want us to have a little bit more robust dialogue about how that plays out. And Karsten, my one question to you, are district directors and office staff, are they essential employees?
Well, as far as that particular law, at least my understanding, is that it is for all school employees, not just the essential school employees.
To have option for free daycare?
No, the Family First Corona Relief Act, and now the latest version of it. At least my understanding is that it's for all school employees. So, you know, if there was someone who had COVID, you know, since the law was enacted, they could take up to 10 leave days through the Coronavirus Act, regardless of their type of employment with school districts. So it wasn't just for essential employees or not. So that's that one part of the law. You know, I don't think that district directors would be considered essential employees, but that's a separate issue in terms of who gets the leave, the COVID leave.
So, so am I saying, is my summary clear then, that staff are not allowed, because we're not opting into the American Rescue Plan, to have an additional 10 days if they've already used up their 10 COVID days?
Yeah, and Jackie is, I think, maybe going to speak here. Jackie, do you want to go, or do you want me to answer that question?
You can go ahead.
Okay.
If you want to answer that question.
Yeah, there have been multiple rounds of what I call COVID leave, just to simplify the message. And the first round had a certain deadline. You know, the school board at our recommendation extended that deadline from December 31st to March 31st. And so, but that law did not add more days to COVID leave. The maximum has always been 10 days that an employee could take of COVID leave, you know, regardless of when it happened. So it didn't go from 10 days to 20 days. It's always been a max of 10. And, you know, I was a strong proponent of extending it to March 31st, and I think it probably passed unanimously here at the board level. Now the situation is different in terms of how many of our staff members have received vaccinations. And so we don't think that extending it, you know, beyond March 31st is necessary. At least that's our perspective. We could certainly, you know, bring it forward for further discussion with the whole board, you know, when we have a chance to have Amy present and, you know, Jackie to provide more information. One thing we did talk about during the committee today is that our understanding is that, you know, we could always extend it, you know, at a later time. You know, we don't have to do it, you know, before March 31st. Obviously, it'd be too late to do that anyway, but we could decide, well, you know, there's a new variant. The vaccination isn't working well enough. We have a lot of people who are sick from work, and so then we could institute it at that time.
I guess, Jackie, I guess my issue is that some people are afforded to work from home because they have flexible work options, but some people aren't. So, and then some people have to take sick time because they're not afforded to work from home, while others will not have to take sick time. So that's where my movement more into accepting the American Rescue Plan that was just voted on would make more sense, and it would be more kind. So I'm ready to hear from anybody.
Yeah, I'll jump in real quick. I think there's two different issues you're talking about. The governor came out with an order on the 15th that stating people that were working remotely go back into work, and that, and then what you're talking about, this rescue plan. I think it's a good dialogue at a future meeting, because some of us don't even know the conversation that you had with your committee. So it's not fair for us to start jumping in on something without having some background information as to why the recommendation was that way and such. So I don't think we need to debate it now, because I don't think it's fair to us, some of us that went on the committee, to have a dialogue without further information in front of us.
I completely agree with you, Jim. However, time is of the essence, and we just entered several hundred kids today. So I think for teachers and staff that are in the buildings to have that extra pressure, and I'm not saying we should debate it. I'm just saying waiting another week or 2 weeks, you know, could impact people. And you're right, you don't know the background, so.
I'm not
Jennifer, yeah, Jennifer, do you want to add anything?
I would just say, thank you, Holly, for bringing that up again, because it wasn't sitting right with me as well. But I I don't know that we have enough information tonight to be able to discuss it. If we could add it to the agenda for our next board meeting so that we can talk about it, I think that would be helpful. I know that's not best case scenario for our staff who are possibly needing this. I just think I think it's probably correct that it will not be needed as often, and we sure hope that it's not. But as Holly stated, there are some situations where people have maybe had COVID and are not completely through with that, and then also, our kids are not vaccinated, and so they could possibly be bringing it home or get sick, and parents would need to stay home with them. So I do think it's still an issue, and so I think it should be brought up here.
Okay, board member Darius. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to say I would be very supportive of us extending the, I'm not sure what the right words are, the 10-day rescue plan for use one time through the end of the school year. And for simplicity, I'd just say through June 30th, which is the end of the school calendar or the school fiscal year. If it's possible that we could have staff that did not get vaccinated that could get COVID and has not had COVID yet, and I think they should be allowed to collect those 10 days if something like that would happen. So as far as the rest of the stuff, I just don't, that's just the way it is. Some people can work from home. They're going to work from home if they're sick, and if they're not, they're not. But I would certainly welcome an offer, if others are in favor of it, to extending that whatever we call that COVID 10-day pay, which the governor paid up till end of the calendar year, and then we did the first 3 months. I think it would be fair to extend it to the end of the school year. So hopefully I'll hear back on that at a later time if others are in favor of it. Thank you.
Just had a clarifying question, Kirsten. Before we extended it, and it wouldn't be an additional 10 days, this is not an additional 10 days either, or it is? It is? Mm-hmm. Okay, so if someone has already used their 10 days, this could be an additional 10 days. Mm-hmm. So that's the difference between this one and the last one.
Thank you for asking that clarifying question. I wasn't aware that it was an additional 10 days. I know the second COVID leave was not. So okay. Thank you, Jackie.
Yeah, it is an additional 10 days. The first extension we did in January was just for those who hadn't used their original 10 days. So this is additional. So we could have staff that over the course of 18 months could use 20 days of COVID leave. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we'll gladly bring it to the next April 19th meeting.
I'm not ready to vote on something I don't have information in front of me. I'm glad Board Member Keller brought it up. I was sitting in the back room here. I was here earlier. I heard a little bit about it, but I didn't pick up on all the conversations, dialogue, or had the information in front of me. Do you have anything else, sir, Board Member Keller, or Board Member Tiff on the personnel? Okay, thank you.
Yes, one thing.
Certainly.
There was an opportunity for us to talk about the community recreation coordinator position, in which it was posted, and Jim, you and I were part of that joint powers agreement, which was a long process. And from that, we have to hire somebody now, and they put out the job rec, and somebody has applied, and they've done the interview. So everything was done correctly. And so we're hoping that we can move forward with that tonight.
Thank you. Legislative Policy Committee, Board Member Darius.
Yeah, there really is not much to report. We met, was it 2 or 3 weeks ago? The notes from the meeting are in the board packet. So we worked on different policies here and there, but have not gone into things in depth and a lot of others. So I think just reading the report would be sufficient.
And I'll report on the Operations Committee. We met this morning, 4:45 today before this regular board meeting. Really a couple of things, Brent Lexvold, the food service director, brought his 10-year plan, already through 2 years of it. He purchased some convection ovens some time ago before COVID. They were twice as much as what he got them for now. So he's able to buy a couple for the same price he could have bought one. And so that was a good thing. He needed them, and a good thing that he has his fund there for that. We also heard about the busing update from First Student, how they're handling things and doing things, and they'll come back to the full board in August with the plan for the next school year after we make a decision, and if we're going all in, all person ready to come in September, how we're going to handle that. And lastly, we talked about the playground equipment at the middle school. I drove by the other day, and there's just a pile of I think board member Tower called it little people out there, and on the tennis courts, on the grass, running around. So truly a need for that time, because the teachers are trying to be innovative in ways to try to keep them busy for that time period outside. Mr. Palmetier talked about watching 20 minutes of maybe somebody else could
Line tag.
line tape. The kids were playing, and they loved it. Well, who couldn't? It was probably 70 degrees outside when they did it. It's on April 5th. The other thing, the natural playground looks like it might actually be in by May, if not June, but by May. We also talked about the other school playground that we had initially talked about operations. There's some fundraising going on. Alan, Mr. Gaylor has also spoken to the city, went to the city council. They're on board for doing infrastructure, storm sewer, helping with getting the site prepared. And that's a tune of right around $50,000. We have a great partnership with the city of Redmond and the Public Works Department. There's a push, and a much needed push, to try to get it in sooner than later. Funding right now is about $25,000. We don't have concrete numbers. We kind of threw a number of dollar amounts around there, so we've asked them to come to the next school board meeting with a budget of what they need to raise, what they expect the school district to pay, and how, and if the equipment can be ordered as late as mid-June, early first part of July. And so getting it in place by late summer or early this fall. We weren't comfortable, I don't think, being willing to expend and commit X number of dollars without having something more in place that would then kind of what the Sunnyside playground went with. And that was more of a handicap structured type of playground, which is used, very nice. So you'll see that in the coming meeting there. Board member Tiff and board member Derek, do you have anything to add before I go to board member Tower at the queue? Nothing? Board member Tower.
Thank you. Hey, so I had a thought about this playground over at the Twin Bluff. A constituent emailed me and asked why we can't use the COVID funds for that. And then there was a rationale because the playground was put up before COVID came around, and it wouldn't seem like we were doing it because of COVID. We're doing it because we needed a playground. We're using the money wrong. However, that was before we had to loop a whole group of students twice through the school. And so I'm wondering if COVID money could be used for that, simply because playing and mental health are critical for kids. And could there be an argument made that this group of students will have gone 2 years without a playground? And it's not equitable unless we want to rotate the schools, like all the Jefferson kids go to Twin Bluff and all the Twin Bluff kids go to, that's where my head's at in terms of equity. And could there be an argument made that we could use the COVID funds because of that? So I don't have any answers, but somebody did bring it to my attention, and I want us to kind of problem solve, be creative, but also know that it's not equitable.
Okay. I have an answer, I think, for you. Go ahead, Superintendent Anderson.
Yeah, I'm gonna pass it on to Jackie because she's the one who analyzed it, if you're okay with that, Chair Brian?
Yes.
All right, our guidance on using the ESSER funds, and I have not gotten guidance on ESSER 3 yet, which was just approved here in March, but the guidance on ESSER 2 is we would have to apply to the state for permission first because it's equipment. And when we apply, we would have to guarantee that we have met some of the other COVID needs the state has made priority, such as sanitation, mental health, technology. We would have to say that we have used the other ESSER funds to fulfill all of those needs before using it on other building expenses is what they would call them.
Okay, thank you. Board Member Dirks. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't know if Carson or Jackie can maybe answer this. I personally think that COVID dollars could be put towards this also, but is it really necessary if we are questionable? Will we be able to spend all the COVID dollars that are available or not? If we are going to spend it anyway, then maybe it's a moot point, and maybe we can just agree that we can take, I know we're into budget cuts and everything else, but a larger allotment out of the general fund to get this thing done, rather than worrying about COVID. If the COVID dollars are going to be used anyway, what's the difference? They're all coming in to the general fund to go out for COVID one way or another, I believe. And so if we're using it all for COVID, it really doesn't matter. Thank you.
Yeah, I think Harlan's approach would be the way to go. Jackie doesn't have all the guidelines for ESSER 3 yet, but I'm confident that we'll be able to find appropriate expenditures that we can use those funds to pay for. And then that will hopefully free up some other funds so we can do, something like the middle school playground. So I'm hoping that in 2 weeks, when we bring the information to the board, we'll include that as part of the packet. We won't know all the rules yet unnecessarily, but I think we'll have a good idea.
Yeah, the idea of bringing it to the board also is to let the public, we're having it, this is our target for the funds for this playground. We need to know by this date so we can match, get it done this year. So those are the real reason that the reasons to come before the board for it. So people know, instead of just saying we're raising it, we'll use it sometime down the road. But give them a target. We get it raised this X number of dollars by this date, we can get her in, we can get her done. Okay, saying nothing. Any other committees that anybody has that they would like to, or meetings that they're involved in at all? Anybody else?
With the equity committee, there will be things coming to the meeting in April, at the end of April, our workshop. And with community education and recreation, there's information in the board packet. I'm not going to go over it, but there is a new catalog of the classes being offered for community ed and recreation, and some updates from them as well in the board packet.
Good, thank you. There's nothing else, we'll go on to administrative reports.
Thank you. I'll just highlight a couple of different things. First, I'll repeat what Anna said. The community ed brochure is fantastic, even during a year of COVID. We did include that as an extra. It's also on the school district's website. There is discussion about the appropriate school starting and ending times. So I did send an article out to board members, and that's a discussion we'll need to have. High school's initial request was to start earlier. If we have a two-tier system, they'd like to start earlier. Elementary leaders would like a longer instructional day. And so I did meet with our transportation department to see what they can do in terms of meeting those two requests. We are proceeding with the Achievement and Integration Program planning. That does not mean that we have to commit as a school district or a school board but we are planning to meet with Lake City and some other neighboring school districts if they're interested to increase racial and economic integration and reduce achievement disparities. And so Jess has been leading that effort, but she'll involve a number of people as we move forward, including the equity team and other important stakeholders. Really, that's all I have right now, unless there are any questions.
Thank you. I just want to go on record that I am not in favor of going to an earlier starting time at the high school, or at least not much earlier. I did some research going back 50 years ago. At that time, the school day for high school was from 8:25 a.m. to 3:45 p.m. on a 7-period day. And that was back in my era, little less than 50 years ago, but as a senior. But I don't think at that time I would have liked getting to school at high school any earlier than 8:25. So it was just another way of putting it in perspective, besides all the testament we had a year ago, a year and a half ago, whatever it was, about starting times and block schedules and stuff, and the need to get for high school students, clocks to get working in their body the way they should. So I'm just going on record, I won't support an earlier start time.
Thank you. Anybody else have anything? Otherwise, I have something. We'll try to speak up, I guess, when probably not being heard that well, so we'll do our best. Superintendent Anderson, question, if you could pass on to Principal Nemenich and administrative team, a question. That's all it is a question by me. An area school is, with prom last year being canceled, has invited their seniors who graduated last year to come back for prom. Just curious if that's been considered or thought of. This school probably doesn't expect a great number of them to come back, because many of them are in college or done with high school. But it was kind of an interesting idea. Prom went out the door last year with COVID, so I just share that with you. You can share with your admin team.
Yeah, I'll pass that on to Mr. Nemenich.
Thank you. Seeing nothing else, we'll go on to consent agenda items.
Yeah, please note that there was an updated consent agenda put on the board packet. So if you print out an earlier version, please look at the online version now.
Thank you. Anybody have anything they'd like to pull from the consent agenda? Board Member Darius.
Yes, I would like to pull items 3, change in non-classified, and item 4, new hires.
3 and 4. Anybody else have anything else? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to the rest of the consent agenda, with the exclusion at this time for number 3 and 4.
Anna, so moved.
Board Member Osendorf said motion to approve. Is there a second?
Okay, second.
Member Tiff, second. Any discussion? All in favor, signify. Oh, we can't do that. We gotta do roll call vote. Bear with me. Board Member Tower.
Aye.
Board Member Tiff.
Aye.
Board Member Buck. Vicky. Board Member Darius.
Aye.
Board Member Osendorf.
Aye.
Board Member Bryant says aye. Okay, we'll go back to number 3. Board Member Darius.
Yeah, I just all of a sudden this change in non-classified and this whole program and combining of this position caught me surprised by this being here all of a sudden just in the board pack right here. I have concerns about merging this stuff the way it is. I've often wondered why we don't have the janitors maintain the pool and the chemicals. They maintain the hockey rink and ice, so it seems to me. And so I can't vote in favor of it at this time. And then because of that, when we get to new hires, I'll talk about, I will not vote in favor of that hire. So thank you.
Anybody else have anything? Otherwise, we'll entertain a motion. We'll do number 3 first. Board Member Tiff?
I'm just wondering if I'm not sure the procedure here, but if we can discuss that number 3 a little bit more. That was
Certainly.
something that we talked about at the personnel committee.
Now, we can do a motion, and we can always discuss after the motion, too.
Okay.
Or motion to approve or not approve, number 3? Is
Motion to approve.
there a second?
Anna, second.
Motion by Board Member Tower, and second by Board Member Ossendorf. Board Member Tiff?
Aye.
No, we want more discussion. We want to discuss it more.
Got it. I was just wondering if Dawn could explain a little bit more
Sure.
about the position.
Ms. Weathern, are you on the call?
Sure.
Yes, I am.
Okay.
I didn't hear what Jennifer had, what she had indicated. Well, I can't hear her very well.
Sorry, Dawn, I was just asking if you could explain a little bit more about the position that we talked about, the discontinuance of the aquatics director and
Yes.
the new position. If you could explain that a little bit more.
Yes, really, that conversation did take place several years ago about combining some of the responsibilities at the Twin Bluff Pool with the community recreation position to save money for both positions. But because we had the Joint Powers Board, we were restricted to the governing board. So when that dissolved in February, that was the perfect time to reevaluate that position and look at combining some of those responsibilities. So at this time, that individual, the aquatics director, is also in charge of swimming lessons for middle school, but because the middle school isn't a middle school, those lessons are not happening. So really what that individual is doing is checking the chemicals, and then they are the coach for the boys and girls teams. So that was what that position was. So when we reevaluated it, the piece was pulled out, and then the coaching positions were eliminated from that. And so we had that job description sent to be rebanded and regraded with those new duties added. The only thing I wanted to make sure is when the lessons were added back in that we would reevaluate that job. So currently that job is being divided a little bit between the general fund and community education. And so with there not being the governing board, we were able to pull that together and hire a position that we felt was going to, move us into the next few years for community recreation. So that individual was, we put out the job, and we got some really fantastic people that applied, and we hired the best, or we're hoping to hire the best candidate. So are there other questions or clarification?
Yes, Board Member Tower.
So I heard Arlen say something about the chemicals. Why can't the custodial staff do the chemicals? And then I heard you say, Dawn, that this new hire isn't doing the chemicals.
No, they are doing the chemicals. They're not going to be doing the coaching. The coaching are those two pieces there. And because we're not a middle school, they will not be coordinating any swimming lessons during the day.
Is this person also the one working with the pool, Colville Pool?
Correct. And doing
so
that. Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. They have dual pool responsibilities with the chemicals and all of that.
Correct.
Okay, I get it.
Okay. Anything else? Not, I'll start with Board Member Tiff. On number 3.
Yes, aye.
Aye. Board Member Darius.
No.
Board Member Buck. Nikki.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Board Member Ossendorf.
Aye.
Board Member Tower.
Aye.
Board Member Bryant says aye. Passes 5-1. Board Member Darius, number 4. Pull that one.
Sure, thank you. Once again, because of my disapproval of this position in the first place, I will not be voting to approve Michaela Beach for this position. So however somebody makes a motion, and you make one for everything but that, I'll vote yes, or else you can just make a motion to approve all of them, and I'll vote no, and I'm sure it'll go through. So thank you.
I would like to clarify the process if I could. when people leave long-term positions, we as directors and leaders of the school should reevaluate job duties. When the last time that job, community recreation, was evaluated was several years ago. As time change and more duties are added to it or taken away, as good leaders, fiscally responsible, we should always reevaluate positions to see if they are banded and graded the same. Sometimes they come in higher, sometimes they come in lower. But that's our responsibilities as, fiscal managers of the school, to make sure that we look at positions anytime a position is open. And that's what I've made, effort to do. We fortunately don't have a lot of turnover in community ed, especially in a coordinator's position. But I think we need to reevaluate. Again, sometimes things are coming in higher, sometimes they're coming in lower. But unfortunately, in the last few years, community recreation staff have added a lot of responsibilities to their plates. And so therefore, we're expecting more. Many of our positions are responsible 7 days a week. They're on call 7 days a week, from early in the morning till late at night. So, I just like to, share that. I'm hoping we're doing that in all of the areas of our district, making sure that those jobs are evaluated appropriately and banded and graded appropriately for the work that's being done. Perfect time to do that is when a person leaves a position before you hire someone new.
Board Member Dirks.
Thank you. I might, indeed, what Dawn is saying may be 100% correct. I just do not agree, and I do not appreciate having this shoved in front of me at the Wednesday before the board meeting. We're going to change a classification of an employee and then have a vote on making the change with me not having any knowledge of this ever even being discussed in the past. So I'm just standing to myself. Thank you.
Yep. Board Member Tower.
Arlen, this was discussed at the March 8th Personnel Committee, and it was brought to the board at that time. There was probably not a very fruitful discussion around it, but it was brought to the board. So I just want you to know that that did happen. And anybody else want to jump in? Pam isn't here. She's the chair of that committee. But Jennifer, do you remember us discussing it and bringing it?
I do, Holly. I was going to say the same thing. It has been talked about for the last 2 personnel meetings.
Right.
All right. What's the board wishes? We don't have a motion yet either way on number 4.
I will make a motion to approve number 4 as is.
Motion by Board Member Tip to approve number 4 as submitted. Is there a second? Second by Board Member Tower. Start with Board Member Buck.
Aye.
Board Member Dirks.
No.
Board Member Ossendorf.
Aye.
Board Member Tower.
Aye.
Board Member Tip.
Aye.
Board Member Bryant votes aye. Passes 5-1. Okay, thank you. Donations and grants. Superintendent Anderson.
I just need to find my chart here.
Oh, okay. I can take it if you want.
Yeah, there is a resolution accepting donations and grants. The first donation is a gift from Mayo Clinic in Rochester for 3 books called Art of Healing at Mayo Clinic. And I've seen one of them just real quickly, and so we appreciate that. It's always good information and important information to share. We also have donations from Molly and Ryan Kiefer and Jan and Brian Sutton for a total of $2,000. That's to purchase books that amplify marginalized voices. And so we really appreciate the donations that the Kiefers and Suttons made to the district to benefit our students. So thank you.
Thank you. What's the board wish to do? Need a motion, please.
Anna will make a motion to approve the donations.
Motion to approve. Is there a second?
Tip, a second.
Motion by Board Member Ossendorf, second by Board Member Tip. Any discussion? I'll just say thank you very much for their generous donation. That was Board Member Dirks.
Aye.
Board Member Ossendorf.
Aye.
Board Member Tower.
Aye.
Board Member Tip.
Aye.
Board Member Buck.
Aye.
Board Chair Brian votes aye. Passes 6-0. All right. Budget reconciliation reasons and target. I knew I'd stumble on that one a little bit.
Yeah, we have three different items related to the budget reconciliation process. This first item talks about why we have a reconciliation process. And then we'll talk about the specific program reductions, and then finally the list of non-renewals. They're all separate but equal or integrated at the same time. So first of all, just need to remind the board why we're going through a budget reconciliation process. A reminder that this year we hired significantly more staff and had significantly higher operations expenses because of COVID. We needed to hire online teachers. We wanted to have enough staff so we could socially distance throughout our buildings with classes, and that led to significantly higher expenses. So that's a big reason why we're going through this process now. Also, like other school districts throughout the state, we have fewer students this year compared to last year. And I don't remember the state numbers, but for Red Wing, it's about 120 students fewer than what we had in May of 2020. And so declining enrollment in general, but because of COVID in particular, we've been particularly hard hit. Of course, when we have fewer kids, then we receive less state money. And so that's another significant reason for the budget reconciliation process. Some other things that are more bureaucratic for budget assumptions, we assumed a 0% state increase. We're hoping it's going to be higher now, but that has not been finalized. So, I think it's appropriate to be cautious, when we're making this decision. So we're assuming 0% for now. Also, we did not include some of the COVID funding that will be received from the federal government. And so when we get all those rules and regulations, we'll be coming back to the school board to explain how we hope to spend that money. So I don't know if you have any questions or if I should just go on to the next item.
Well, we have you want to do individual motions, that we talked about this at our workshop 2 weeks ago, I think it was, quite a lengthy discussion on it. And there's a motion, there's a recommendation. Probably should take them individually recommendation, but before that, I have board member Derek's in the queue.
Thank you. I could go along in general with any one of these, the 2.2, 2.5, 3 million. However, I can't go along with what I think I'm reading into here on everything. And so before I vote on whatever we're doing, I want to be assured that we are going to get our busing back to what we promised with the referendum, and that we are not going to continue the 2-mile walking zone. I'm trying to remember, what is it, 1 mile and 1.5 mile? Whatever it is, we must, in my opinion, honor that referendum. And then also classroom size targets I need to make sure that we have those in place regardless of what we decide. And if there's other key things from the referendum, I might be overlooking them. I know we talk counselors and different things, but I don't look at this as totally spending cuts. It's a reduction of eliminating the COVID expenses that we had this year, and it's right sizing. That's what I view this as, what we're doing. And with our staff, right sizing with our staff. So can I have are these different cuts, the 2.2, the 2.5, and the 3, are they specific on each item, or how can I be assured that we're not going to continue a 2-mile bus walking zone?
Superintendent Anderson.
Yeah, if I could, and I apologize, I was kind of differentiating reasons for the reconciliation, and then I was going to jump into the actual recommendation for budget reduction targets. So how about if I answer that first, and then I'll answer your question, Arlen. At the last workshop session, we did look at multiple different budget reconciliation options. The discussion zeroed in on 2.2 million and 3 million, or at least somewhere in between those two figures. So I did include in the packet today a potential list at 2.2 million, another one at 2.5 million, and then a third one at 3 million. and kind of listed what the administrative recommendations would be for each one of those budget reconciliation targets. And so that information is in here. Consistent with what Jackie Paradis recommended, my recommendation is to set a budget reconciliation target of 2.2 million for fiscal year 2022. However, as I said, we have plans set up regardless of the amount that the board decides to target. So that's my recommendation for tonight. To answer your question, Arlen, if you look at that particular chart, you can see that at the towards the end, under the other category, the first reduction of $60,000, if there's a $2.2 million reduction, assumes that we would have a 2-mile no bus zone for grades 7 through 12 and a 1-mile no bus zone for grades K through 6. That's what I asked our transportation router to program on. So I don't have the results of that yet, but I'm assuming that we could do that and still reduce one bus route, which would save us $60,000. So as of April 15th, I cannot guarantee it, but I'm going to make every effort to make that happen because that was involved with our referendum promise. I got to give a disclaimer though. If we have social distancing guidelines or if there's something else significant like that going on, then then we have to go back to the drawing board and rethink things just like we did this year. But everything I'm pushing for is to go to the 2-mile for the secondary, 1 mile for elementary.
Remember, Keller.
Thank you. I did put Arlen in the queue because I was going to thank him, but that meant to be verbal. So thank you, Arlen, for bringing that up and being so passionate about it. I agree with you. After hearing Superintendent Anderson, I'm still not in favor of kids having to walk 2 miles to school. I'm definitely not in favor of little people having to walk 2 miles to school, but it's a long day in general, and walking 2 miles and walking home 2 miles is a big thing. So I want to know, much like Arlen, how we can move that into the 7th and 12th grade also.
Okay, thank you. Remember, Ossenberg.
So this is sort of tied into the busing, but my question is, the high school is requesting that we have an earlier start time for high school, which we have not approved or rejected at this point, but does that factor into the transportation routes or not really? Like, are we currently with the split times, are we, using a Sunnyside bus to then do the high school route? So if we did that, if we opted to go with an earlier start time for the high school, would we have higher transportation costs?
Yeah, thank you. Good questions from both Holly and Anna. First, right now we don't have a plan to reduce the no bus zone for the secondary kids to less than 2 miles. After we get the initial run, we can certainly discuss other options. But right now they're kind of planning on the 1 mile and 2 mile. And they're also kind of setting it up so that the high school kids would go first, but the elementary kids would have a longer instructional day. And it's also assuming a 2-tier system, a 2-tier bus system. And that's, I think, to your question, Anna. They're going to program to that initially. I think we could flip, the start times, so that if at some point you decide, no, let's keep it like it is this year, let's have elementary kids go first and then secondary later, I think we can make that happen. The issue, I think, that really determines how many buses we need would be if we have a 1-tier or 2-tier system. So we have driver shortages, which causes some problems with finding enough drivers to have a 1-tier system. We think a 2-tier system is more affordable, but it's going to require for a student to change their contract to give us a better rates. And so we're working with First Student on that. So it's all going to be kind of rolled in together in order to see where we are.
Okay, thank you. I'll just add here before we get a motion here is, I don't think anybody wants to see the 2 mile busing buffer zone. I think we're gonna work however we can best to do that. But I'm hearing tonight that we don't have a definite answer one way or the other, but striving towards trying to make that work. Also next year, we're down 120, but I think that number is even greater now, that we're down from the other day as to number of students. So we're gonna have potentially less students, so that will affect the busing too. With that lost student comes less revenue. We've had that discussion about how less revenue, Superintendent Anderson just hit that on there. And I'll just throw it out there again as we talked at meeting. The cuts we do today, I think board member Derek brought this up, are $1 million of it or something to that number, if my memory serves me correct, with COVID. And the rest are other cuts that we're doing through attrition and other means that they're bringing forward. We can go 2.2, we can go however number with the board wishes tonight, but remember next year, whatever we don't cut this year, we potentially have to look at cutting next year. So I'm just throwing it out there. They're going to be Montessori's cottage opening up, as we're hearing. There's probably potentially looking at even less students in 2022 than we have in 2020. So with that, Superintendent Anderson, did you have another comment?
Yeah, just a real quick comment. The board is being requested to approve the $2.2 million budget reconciliation. That does not mean that the specific list of reductions is included in that.
Okay.
So I just want to be clear about that. That'll be the next recommendation, so we can certainly talk about it more.
So I'll entertain a motion to one way or the other for the reconciliation numbers target.
I move to set a budget reconciliation target of 2.2 million for fiscal year 2022.
Tiff will second.
Motion by Towers, second by Tiff. Further discussion? Hearing none, we'll start with Board Member Ossendorf.
Aye.
Board Member Tower.
Aye.
Board Member Tiff.
Aye.
Board Member Buck. Mickey.
She left.
Okay, Board Member Derek.
Aye.
And chair votes no. Passes 5-1. Okay, we'll go on.
I think 4-1.
Would be 4-1.
4-1. Hey.
I got you. It's Sesame Street. I got you.
Oh, get better math at that. So I would. So thank you for clarifying this. 4-1. You're correct. Thank you. Next item, resolution discontinuing, reducing, and adding programs, positions, and budgets.
Well, this is a
Superintendent Anderson, go ahead.
always a difficult item to bring up whenever we're making reductions, because it impacts kids and parents and of course staff members. At the same time, we know that we need to make significant reductions, and so the administrative team has been talking about all sorts of different options, and I've been involved with those discussions, and so this is my recommendation, based on a lot of input. I wish we didn't have to make all the cuts that are being proposed. One thing before I forget is that I would like to change one item. It's actually a minor change, and that is for item number 11. Instead of reducing 0.6 high school industrial tech position, I'd like to change that to 1.6 high school industrial technology position. But at the same time, we would delete item number 9, which is a full-time project lead the way position. Project Lead the Way is part of the industrial tech program, and so I'd like to have that as part of the overall umbrella for industrial tech, because our current Project Lead the instructor also teaches some other industrial tech programs. So if we could make that change, it really doesn't impact particular people. It's just a bureaucratic thing.
Thank you. Board Member Tower, with you.
So am I understanding from what I'm reading, I just want to be very clear, the high school is moving to a 7-period day?
Yeah, George or Mr. Nemenich informed me today that that's going to be his recommendation for next year, is to have a 7-period day. We can move ahead with this particular resolution regardless of that decision. It was set up so that it could be a 7 or an 8-period day for schedule for next year. But he did announce that to his staff today, that that's the plan for next year.
Okay, thank you. Good question. Is there a motion to adopt the following resolution presented in the packet?
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Board Member Ossendorf. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Board Member Tower. Further discussion? Superintendent Anderson.
If I could just clarify if that would include the
Yes,
the
as
information that I
amended.
presented. Okay.
The corrected version? Yes. Thank you. Board Member Tower, you were quick.
Thank you. What does that put our class sizes at the high school for our core classes?
Core classes, well, this, assuming that we have all kids who are, who are not in person come back, so everyone is back in the high school. Our typical class sizes, according to Mr. Nemenich, hold on just a second, I have that here. I have, I got the latest information from Mr. Nemenich. Right now, in previous years, according to George, core teachers had typical class size of 25 to 28 on average. Some lower, some higher. For next year, the class sizes for core teachers would be between 28 and 32 approximately, according to Mr. Nemenich. But again, that's assuming everyone is back in person. So as we learn about more kids who will not be here in person, then those average class sizes will come down from that.
Good question. All right, there's a motion on the floor. A second. Start with Board Member Tower.
Aye.
Board Member Tiff.
Aye.
Board Member Derricks.
Aye.
Board Member Ossendorf.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Passes 5-0, 5-0. How's my math now? Pretty good?
Yes.
No more cookies in the cookie jar.
What was that?
I said there's no more cookies in that cookie jar. You take out 5, there was 5, there's 0.
All right, we'll go on to teacher non-renewals, and Superintendent Anderson, I'll let you, this is kind of a procedure that we do annually.
We do, and of course this year it's the list is lengthier for several reasons. First of all, we have what are called Tier 2 teachers. So those are teachers who do not have the full teacher license that we need in Minnesota. And so every year we non-renew those individuals, and they may be hired back if there's an opening. So that's one reason. We also have numerous teachers who are on out-of-field permissions, or OFPs. And those are people with a full license, but we want them to be teaching in areas where they're not licensed. So it could be a German teacher who is going to teach social studies. The German teacher may not have that social studies license, and so if we can't find another qualified candidate, we can obtain an OFP from the state for that particular person. Once again, we need to non-renew people who are teaching here because of an OFP. We have to advertise for 60 days according to state guidelines, and then we could hire the same person back if that works out. That's very common in special education areas. And so you see a lengthy list of our special education teachers, and many, if not all of them, hopefully will be back next year, depending on the application or the posting process. And then finally, of course, we do have budget reconciliation target that we need to meet, especially the number of online teachers. I think we're 9 this year, and so we need to reduce those. Some of them, again, may be hired back, depending on how we use our COVID funds. We will be offering an online school next year, but we don't have the numbers yet in terms of how many first graders we'll have, or fourth graders, or juniors. And so we need to get that information before we start hiring people back using COVID funds. So it will take some time, but we will get there. So regretfully, the recommendation is to terminate and non-renew the teaching contracts of about 25 teachers that are included in the board packet. And I tried to include if they're tier 2 or OFP, but then it also includes budget reduction teachers as well.
Okay, thank you, Superintendent Anderson. Your motion to approve the resolution?
Anna Ostendorf, I move to approve the resolutions relating to the termination and non-renewal of the teaching contracts of the probationary teachers listed in the board packet.
Thank you. Motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, Arlen here.
Yep. Go ahead.
Just a question, do we have to do each one of these individually on a vote, or can we group them?
In the past, we've grouped them, but I did confirm with the School Board Association that we can have one resolution approving all the resolutions that are presented.
Wonderful, you just made my day, because I didn't think we'd done it in the past. That'd be a long process. Thank you.
I would just like to thank everybody for teaching in Red Wing. We appreciate it, and we hope to see you back someday. So thank you.
Exactly. Thank you. Start with Board Member Tiff.
Aye.
Board Member Darius.
Aye.
Board Member Ostendorf.
Aye.
Board Member Tower.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Passes 5-0. Okay, thank you. Response to resolution of non-concurrence, Superintendent Anderson.
Yeah, as you hopefully know, the Native American Parent Committee did submit a resolution of non-concurrence with our educational program in terms of how it serves our Native American kids. That was done as per state law. We have 60 days to respond to that message, which means that we need to provide a resolution responding to that particular letter or resolution from the parent committee. And so at the last board meeting, we did talk about or authorized me to set up a subcommittee of the board in order to review that response. And so I was moving ahead with that, and then I realized that really if we're going to form an official committee of the board or a subcommittee of the board, we should really take that back to get formal approval of the committee, its purpose, the members, and who would serve as chair. And so I called time out, and that's why the recommendation is to approve what I included in the board packet. Now, at the same time, I had drafted a potential resolution that I did share with the parent committee and Arlen and Holly because, and Nikki, because I was hoping that they would serve on this subcommittee. And so I did share that with them. I've received some feedback, but I think to be consistent with what we had discussed earlier, I do think it would be best to approve the subcommittee that I recommended and then review the draft of the response to the letter and then take it back to the April 19th board meeting.
You're asking for approval of the ad hoc committee tonight, drafted just for information for us.
Correct.
Board Member Tower, you're in the queue. Were you not? You're muted.
I wasn't in the queue.
Okay.
Somehow I put I don't know.
Board Member Derrick.
Thank you. I'm wondering on this, if we're establishing a conflict of interest with Nikki being chair of this ad hoc committee and being a member of the Native American Parent Committee. Just throwing that out. I don't have an answer for it. Certainly she represents the board as a board member, and she on the other end also. I guess it's up to the board to decide how they want to proceed with this.
Board Member Chip. Holly, you in there now? Board Member Tower, you back in? You're confusing me here. Go ahead.
I just want to say that I remember specifically board member Buck saying that she wears two hats. One is a parent, and that was her advocacy on that parent committee, and then one is a board member for us. So I have no personal problem with her wearing both hats. To be part of this, I think the more knowledge we have behind responding, the better off we're going to be.
Thank you. Board Member Chip.
I agree with what Holly said. I was just going to say that I think this is a good opportunity for us, having Nikki on the board and on the parent committee, that she can be kind of a guide to help us work together on both sides, because as Holly said, she does wear two hats, and we appreciate having her here with us, and so I think it's a great opportunity for us. As long as she is okay with it. I wish she were here to be able to speak to that.
Sounds like a motion to me.
Sure, I can make the motion. I'll make a motion to approve the resolution establishing an ad hoc committee to provide feedback about a response to a letter of non-concurrence as presented.
Thank you. Board Member Chip, is there a second?
Second.
Board Member Ostendorf beat you. Any further discussion? Board Member Ostendorf, you have a question? You're in the field.
I was just going to say about the potential conflict. I think in this instance, because there's not a benefit per se to board member Buck or her family, like as a direct result, I don't think that is would be a conflict. I was just going to throw that 2 cents in there, that I'm usually pretty cautious around potential conflict issues. I don't think this one necessarily would be, but that's just my 2 cents.
Thank you. All right, we'll start the vote with Board Member Derricks.
Yeah, now you put me on the spot. No.
Board Member Lawson.
Aye.
Member Tower.
Aye.
Board Member Tiff.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Passes 4-1. Okay, thank you. Upcoming meetings and upcoming meetings and future topics. Our next meeting is scheduled for April 19th. We're in the hybrid portion. There might be some committees at 4:45 that day or 3:45 that I don't have in front of me. We're meeting here again at 6 o'clock on April 19th. And I'll just add here, been a good meeting. Thank you for letting me be the chair. Appreciate it. Beautiful day. So we're in unusual times here, I'll be honest. With COVID, declining enrollment, budget cuts, referendum promises, there's a lot on the table, a lot of moving parts. We'll get through it. We'll navigate our way through it all. Hopefully at the end of the day, we even have a better product than we did before COVID-19 hit. But time will tell. I know people are digging in, doing a lot of good things here for our students. And just want to let people know we're recognizing, we understand that. And it was a good day today. The kids that weren't in distance learning were all back at school today. And hopefully brighter and better things down the road for everybody. So with that, I'll entertain it to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by Board Member Hassendorf, second by Tower. We'll start with Board Member Ossendorf,
Aye.
Board Member Tower,
Aye.
Board Member Tiff, Board Member Dirks.
Aye.
Board votes, the chair votes aye. We are adjourned at 7:36. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Great job, Jim.
Thank you.
And well said at the end too.